All right, should we?
Yeah.
Let's. So there was a big kind of piece of news. I did a YouTube video on it. Ironically, I did a musing about it on Patreon before. So I've been recording these musings in bulk, and so I have them scheduled out. So there are a lot more of those coming as well. And I recorded one. I can't remember if it's actually posted or not. I did one talking about, okay, is it possible that Gurr could finish the series in 2 books? And I believe I said, yeah, we're supposed to be, hopefully we'll get this announcement on July 31st. Well, it's canceled. Just like everything else in 2020, Gurr has officially said, Winds of Winter, there's obviously the normal news, which is the book's not coming this year. But I actually think this time there is good news,
Come on. Tell me about it.
In this post. So let's dive into this recent post from Gurr talking about the Winds of Winter and kind of its pending release, right? So he says, and I'm going to paraphrase here, writing, reading, writing. So a quick backstory. We were supposed to have the announcement, he said earlier, we were going to have the announcement of Winds of Winter. He was going to go to this convention, which has now been canceled, and stand on stage because he's the headmaster, kind of host running this thing. It's finished, and if it's not, you have my permission to lock me up. Is what he said. But so it was canceled. So he says, I have to confess, after half a year of pandemic, quarantine, and social distancing, I am showing signs of cabin fever, half of which is quite literal in my case. Yes, I am in an actual cabin in the mountains. No, I have no fever, for the present at least. I am healthy for an out-of-shape guy at 71. If nothing else, in the enforced isolation has helped me. Right, I am spending long hours every day on the Winds of Winter and making steady progress. I finished a new chapter yesterday, another one 3 days ago, another one the previous week. But no, this does not mean that the book will be finished tomorrow or published next week. It's going to be a huge book, and I still have a long way to go. Please do not give any credence to any of the clickbait websites that parse every word I say about anything. Basically, he goes on a little bit here. He talks about kind of the pace, right? He says, as of late, I've been visiting with Cersei, Asha, Tyrion, Ser Barristan, and Arya Hota. He says, I'll be dropping back into Bravos next week. I have bad days, which get me down, good days, which lift me up. He says, way back in 1999, when I was in A Storm of Swords, I was averaging about 150 pages of manuscript a month. I fear I shall never recapture that pace again. Looking back, I'm not sure how I did it then. He goes on to talk about some other things he's working on and other projects, but he kind of finishes with. He says, Hollywood is also slow to crawl, but the House of the Dragon is still flying along with writing and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool. There's a little bit of news we have on that. And then he just kind of says, now if you'll excuse me, Arya's calling. I think she means to kill someone. So the crazy, not the crazy thing is that we're not getting it. I mean, that's not really a surprise at this point as it continues to go along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But this is the first time in literally years that I can remember him saying, I have finished chapters, and giving us any kind of update, which is what we've been saying we want. We've been saying, God, just like how we just know you were writing the Winds of Winter. We didn't know how long it was taking, what you were doing. How far into it are you? And that's kind of what we'll talk about a little bit here. So at least we know for a fact he is writing chapters and has actual chapters done, which is just like, okay, at least we know we're there, right? Like,
yeah. So let me give you my 2 cents on this. You ready? I don't think we've actually had a chance to pull this up and look at it.
You and I haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah, so Matt did a great YouTube video, and then he had a musing, as he said, coming out saying, could we
I recorded that before, actually.
Yes.
And that was simply, can this whole thing be finished in 2 books?
And the answer is no. And actually, there is an indicator in his post that he's either going to cut stuff or he's going to have to he's going to try to make it fit in 2. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if he said no, it has to be 3. Like, it just would not. Sometimes these authors think they can get everything done in one book. I'll give you an example. Robert Jordan's last book, A Memory of Light, ended up being 3 to 4 books. And he thought it was his final book when he was dying. He said that there was one more. Here it is. And they looked at it and they said, there's no way. We can't even, like, there's no way we could put a book like this together. So I'm looking at what George is saying here. And he's saying, this is just, it's so big. Like, the Winds of Winter is getting so big that it's a lot. Now, something interesting. So I will be one of those, I guess, clickbait, websites that's going to look over every word that he's saying here. He does say this. He says, the last thing I need right now is a long interruption that might cost me all the momentum I have built up. What that tells me is an interruption would have cost him this momentum that he's built up. He would have had to stop, and he would have had to prepare. So I kind of think, regardless of whether that is whether or not the convention happens or not, even if it's going forward, he would have shown up and he would have said, I'm still working on it. And actually, it might have even been demoralizing to him to say, gosh, I had great momentum, but I had to stop to come to this convention. And what he's saying here is the silver lining, as he puts it, is that he doesn't have to go to that convention, or he doesn't have to, whatever. It's not going to be an interruption that is going to cost him all this momentum that he's built up. Says he can visit next year and, all that kind of stuff. So, yes, I am happy to hear that he is making a lot of progress, and we're pushing forward. He's writing chapter after chapter. What he's saying there is he finishes a chapter 1 week. In 1 week, he's finished a chapter. The next week, he finished another one. And then he finished another one the following week. That is real good momentum. That's amazing, right?
Well,
Sir
he
Matt?
wrote well, and not even that. In some ways, I guess it depends on the character, because he said, I finished a new chapter yesterday, another one 3 days ago, another one the previous week. But no, this does not mean it will be finished or published next week. He also says, so at least now we have some sort of we have an idea, right? He says, when I was writing Storm of Swords, I was averaging 150 pages of manuscript a month. So a manuscript, I don't believe, is the same thing as just like, this is a finished, edited, polished chapter. It's just, here's like content, right? And it's got to all get cut down and whatever. He says, so we know he's not at that pace. And my guess is that he's not really close to that pace if he thinks that it's so far ahead. So that leads me to believe that he's probably closer to 75, which would be half, or 80, a pace of that manuscript a month currently while he's in isolation, which is at least, good. And so I don't know how many pages of manuscript you would need for a roughly 70 to 80 chapter book. I don't know how many pages are in A Dance with Dragons, which is probably the size that this book will be. But it's probably a lot. So, now maybe we can start doing some math and kind of breaking down and thinking about it. The interesting thing, though, is the characters he's talking about, right? I mean, that's something to talk about, too, is, well, hold on a second, because if you look at the characters he's written about, right? Okay, he says Cersei. Okay, we know Cersei's going to be big. We kind of can use the show as a guide maybe for what she's going to do. Okay, that's cool. Asha, same thing. Tyrion, we kind of have an idea. Sir Barristan is interesting because keep in mind, Barristan Selmy dies in the show. We've talked about the fact he may not die in the books, right? But where Sir Barristan dies in the show would be roughly towards probably the very beginning of this book. So if he were still to die, it'd be like, hold on a second, man. That means that you're like, and he says, I'm in Bravos. Well, that would be like beginning of Winds of Winter, right? Because Arya comes back, I mean, like well into what using the show as a guide would be. I mean, for like season 7, right? And so it's like, well, hold on a second, man. Here, like, are you still in the beginning of this thing, or are you?
Where
towards the
you
end?
At? Yeah, it seems like. I mean, he did say he has a long way to go. That was one of the lines he said in his post. Right. So I was like, well, I mean, again, that even if you're midway through, you still have a long way to go, or are you at the beginning and you have a long way to go?
or has he been writing these character? Has he been doing character arcs? So I because I can't imagine that a POV writer would write, okay, now I just finished this chapter, this is going to be the next chapter, and so now I'm going to, because I think you write these people's arcs, and then the editor and stuff come in and you say, well, okay, now it's going to go, here's how it's going to bounce around.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he goes Bran, Daenerys, okay, now this person. I think he just writes, this is their story, and then it gets, the pace and where they fall in order gets moved around.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it is interesting to look at, like he says at the very end of that, Arya, is off to kill someone. Well, who, right? I mean,
notice he doesn't say Arya is off to kill no one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. Because the person, so he does talk about being in Bravos and finishing Arya chapters. Well, the person Arya is most likely to kill at the beginning of this book is the waif, right? And so,
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, so there's good and bad. I think it's all good.
More good. I think there's more good in this.
Me too. You know why? Because I've been saying for years, and I'll say it until Martin dies or until I die, which who knows? I could die before he does, but let him finish. Let him write this out. Let him write this masterpiece. I guarantee you, as he's writing this, that things are evolving on him, that characters that think he's seeing a different path or whatever. However he writes is amazing, and I love it. And so I say let him finish, let him work through this at whatever pace works for him. And if he's on fire right now and he's just getting after it, then let him go. I wish he wouldn't even have had to, do an update for us there. I mean, it's great to have an update on not a blog and what have you, but hopefully he did that and he went right back into this.
Well, this is
fever.
This to me is, we've been saying, right? And so, I mean, again, like ultimately we want the book. And so, but oddly enough, even though in this whole thing, you're still not getting it. The silver lining to me is this is the first time that I can remember where he's actually talked about how much is actually done. How much are you doing? Because before he just said, I'm writing. He didn't even say I'm writing chapters. He didn't say I was writing this. I mean, he's flat out said here, I've finished multiple chapters. I am at a pace in which I am finishing. And he says, he says next year I hope that both COVID-19 and the Winds of Winter will be done. Which is also, I think, just kind of a way that interesting way for him to word it, because before he's always talked about, like, if I don't have it finished, if it was always kind of a negative, like, God, I hope to have it done. Right. I hope, and he does kind of say that here. I hope that it will be done. But just the tone of this message is more like, I am making progress, not, God, I hope I don't get bogged down by all this other stuff because my life's just a mess. And, I'm just, God, sorry, guys. This is more like, no, I'm hammering away.
Right. I think his mood is contemplative, right? And so other times it hasn't been, like, he always shares his current mood.
He always shares a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so I think he's good. I think he's doing fine. So, I don't know. It's exciting. Take it for what you will. He still has a long way to go, but it looks like he's really zeroing in on 2021 being that year. I think there were years that went by where he barely touched it. To be honest with you, I think there was times where he just got.
This is really telling. I'm with you. I think there were definitely years where he didn't even touch it. I mean, I think months would go by before he would touch it.
Yeah, and it's because he's caught up in production stuff. He's older,
depressed,
whatever. He's the show outpaced him and everything, so that's tough. That's got to be tough on a writer who's trying to create this. But he's fired up now. He's had enough time away from season 8, and honestly, this pandemic has, like you said, he's been in a cabin just writing. He got away from everything, which I think is great. I think it's awesome.
I think it's great too. I mean, you think about all the stuff. Fire and Blood was coming out. World of Ice and Fire was coming out. They're reprinting the versions of the book. The show was the biggest thing ever. I mean, all of these things. He was constantly doing interviews, all this stuff. I mean, this is probably the first time he's had in years where he's like, no, I'm just sitting down and I'm finishing my book.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, so it's not coming. Not really a surprise, but. This is of all of the posts he's made in the past couple of years, this one isn't woe is me, You have nobody to blame. I have nobody left to blame.
No, it's
but
exciting.
Myself.
Yes.
It's a different tone. It's a different message, and at least we know literally that he has actually finished chapters.
Yes.
Which is which is important. So
It's
that
huge.
is that's definitely it's good. It is good news, in that front. So.